How do you know if you put in a good root pass? A lot of times, a lot of guys will look at their bead but don't really know what they're looking at. You hear terminology like, oh, you have IP. IP stands for incomplete penetration. So I'm gonna show you what that looks like. I'm gonna show you what suckback looks like. So whenever you put your bead in, you know exactly what to look out for. One of the things that I want you to understand is that ugly is not in the code book. What I mean by that is when you're starting out, or even if you're a seasoned welder, there's a lot of guys that don't struggle putting their bead in or capping. There's some phenomenal welders out there that are very talented, but if you compare yourself to them, that's only gonna hurt you. All you have to worry about is running a consistent bead. Make sure that you're burning the walls. Make sure that you don't have excess penetration. Excess penetration is having too much metal inside of that pipe or not having enough. You just have to be in between. So this is where it comes in, that whenever you look at it, you should be able to tell that's going to shoot x-ray, or the inspector is going to allow me to proceed to the next step, whatever that might be, right? Talk about the bead, let's talk about the bevels. What are you supposed to be doing whenever you're putting your bead in? You're supposed to be welding the pipe internally through the outside. That is pretty much what you're doing. And the main thing that you should be focused on is burning these bevels. These edges right here, you have to unite them. And I know that this pipe is rusted. It's been sitting in the shop for a little bit, but this is just for instructional purposes. So all my social media quality control, calm down. So if you can see right here, this bead right here doesn't look like it's very slick, but it does meet all of the requirements. Both of the walls are burned. As you can see the metal on the edge of the bevels right there. There's no, if you see a straight line, that is when you will have incomplete penetration. I will show you an example a little bit later. Now, there's a lot of different things that can go wrong with this bead. You can also have too much penetration. You can have a lot of metal inside, and that'll also cause you to bust a test or bust x-ray. It won't pass x-ray. Another thing is undercut. If you're too hot, you will have a line right next to the edge of the metal. I have a little bit of undercut right here, and I'll show you. Notice how this right here is very smooth. There's no lines. But just about right here, I can barely grab it with my fingernails. So that's within tolerance still, but you'll be able to see a line that it looks like a crack all alongside the edge of that metal right there. That is not what you want. Now, a lot of times if it's very minor, like right here, whenever you put your hot pass, a lot of that will go away because the bead will push in. You have to know that if you have a very visible line all along the edge of the pipe, that is not good. That'll be internal undercut, and they'll go ahead and call you on that. Obviously, there's tolerances, but you don't want to have any of that. So if you have a long line all on the edge of that pipe, you need to slow down, you need to turn your machine down, or you need to practice more so that way you won't have it. Pay attention to this bead right here. The bead is going pretty consistent, and notice that there's a change right here. This piece right here was put in with 308 stainless wire without any purge. And I just did that to illustrate what happens whenever you don't purge the oxygen out of that pipe whenever you're welding stainless. Although this is a carbon pipe, I still put that in there, but if you don't get that oxygen out, you start having a bunch of bumps. And even though the walls are burned, you can see a bunch of little undercut on the side right here. It's not too bad, but you can still see it. But that's what will happen if you don't purge it. So if you have a bunch of bumps like this, if you're welding stainless or any metal that requires for you to purge it, this is not going to be good, and you're gonna get busted on it. Talk about incomplete penetration. What is incomplete penetration? Again, that's when you're not burning on the inside of the bevels. The metal might just be lumped up over the edge of the bevel right there. So when you look at on the inside, you still have that knife edge on the inside. That is not what you want. That can happen on one side, or it can happen on both sides. So you have to be very careful. What are some of the things that causes that? If you have bad high-low, maybe you had a bad fit, a bad pipe fitter, whatever the case might be, and you're not reaching long enough going to whatever side it is, that might cause you to get incomplete penetration, or it can also cause you to get undercut on one side. So you have to be very careful. Always ensure that your tungsten is sticking out far enough and that you're strictly looking at the bevels, at the edge of the bevels, and not the material on the outside, so that way you can get it. Let me show you what it looks like. This is what incomplete penetration looks like. Pretty much a straight line. Sometimes it's very minimal, so you have to pay close attention. You can't see the metal behind it, but I actually welded it, and I was trying so hard to get incomplete penetration, and it's just whenever you want to get it, you don't get it, and when you don't, you do. It's weird. But anyways, the X-ray techs are able to detect incomplete penetration very easy, because if you could see, they see that little groove beside the metal, and then they'll see a straight line. There's tolerances depending on what code you're welding on, but you don't want to have any. If you're welding in the refineries and the power plants, a good thing is that you can look inside. So you're looking at the edge of the weld itself to ensure that you don't have any straight lines. How would you fix incomplete penetration? You know, you didn't burn down your walls or whatnot. Well, if it's small enough, you can grind it on the side and you can turn your machine up, and sometimes it'll melt the metal, you know, together, and it'll erase that line. You're trying to erase a line, remember, but you have to be careful, because sometimes that also creates undercut. You can also just put your grinder in there, feather it down, open it up, and start all over again. That's probably, you know, the best thing to do, so you don't have any problem. Now, what about suckback? Suckback will usually happen on the bottom side, usually straight at the bottom, or usually around 5 and 7 o'clock, that area, if you're running it too hot. So if you're going too slow, if you can see, it's a little bumpy right there, and then it kind of just sucked back. Sometimes it will suck back just flush, and that's still within tolerance, but sometimes it'll go below the pipe itself, and that will automatically bust you. You know, you won't be able to shoot. So be very careful whenever you're putting your hot pass, to ensure that you're adding metal and that you're not going very slow, or that your machine is not very hot. So you're looking for, you know, like a hole, like it's sunken down below the pipe. If it's flush with the pipe, you're good, but you don't want to get it, right? So let's say you do get it, best thing to do is to open it up and throw another bead and put another hot pass, so that you don't have any suckback problems. Sometimes you're also going to get cold wire. Cold wire is pretty much a piece of wire that broke off and is sticking up right here on the middle or on the side, whatever part of the bead. Sometimes you get it because you might be running too hot, or you know, your wire might slip off and it'll cut and it'll just be sticking out. You might be going to, there's several reasons why it might happen. If you do have it, you can grind out through the outside and then put your TIG torch on it to see if it'll melt it and bring it down. Just be careful, because if you're at the bottom, it can cause suckback, and that might be another problem. Or if you can't get it, you might just have to cut into it again and put a whole new bead to avoid it. Now, you might also have excess penetration. Excess penetration is pretty self-explanatory. You have too much material inside of the pipe. So if you do get that, you make sure that you fix it before you turn it into the inspector, or don't just say, you know what, let's see what happens, because that always goes wrong. A lot of times when us welders get a repair and they tell you, hey, you have a repair up on that pipe and that scaffold, usually everybody says, man, I knew I was gonna get it, I just didn't fix it. So if you have a doubt about anything, have somebody else look at it, but the best thing to do is for you to take some time and fix it yourself, so that way you don't have to go back. Because remember, too many x-rays is gonna cost you your job, and you know, we live off of every x-ray, and every job is like that. So try to fix it before you turn it in.